Alexander, I don't know if you need it, but one or two small corrections to the slides.
Yeah, I needed it yesterday. Yeah, but if you didn't do it, it's okay.
Okay.
I will use what I have, and then we'll try to do it better in the future. Да, после вебинара у меня предложение. Значит, у меня сложилось, наконец, системный видеоролик или гифка, которая последовательно по каждой теме позволит нам показать. Вот сегодня как раз я ее сложил, и она нам позволит показать, как взгляд на 4 мира принципиально позволяет видеть те вещи, которые не видны. Я сегодня про это буду немножко говорить, но я потом вам нарисую. Я просто хотел на видео записать, но потом понял, мне надо одной рукой держать телефон, другой рукой рисовать на бумажке, чтобы Мареку отправить видео. В общем, не организовался с утра. Понял, что мне проще вам так показать. Ну, в общем, мне кажется, это вот такая правильная находка.
Классно.
Отлично. Это после вебинара, да, сразу сделаем?
Да. После вебинара сразу сделаем. То есть я понимаю, и больше того, я подумал, может быть, по итогу этого вебинара делать сразу пытаться видео, потому что всяким вот людям, которым мы рассылаем, видео про, так сказать, энергию, да, оно интересно. Более интересно, чем про демографию. Хотя, в общем, демография тоже.
А можете включить уже видео у себя?
Так, сейчас постараюсь. О, включилось. Отлично, видишь как. Я тут сижу, болтаю, оказывается, а тут у меня видео целое есть. Я хотел спросить, понимает ли кто-нибудь, вот как, когда я запускаю слайды, как мне сделать какую-то отдельную панельку, чтобы я видел следующий слайд? Или там пару слайдов. Вот есть такой тул, я помню, лет 10 назад, когда я начинал делать презентации, я даже получше понимал на том уровне. То есть ты слайды показываешь людям, а себе, как докладчику, ты видишь два других,
да, я
и ты понимаешь, то есть для того, что, ну, то есть я сейчас, поскольку я их сложил, я их складывал много раз, я сейчас всю логику понимаю изложения, но хорошо, когда ты видишь следующий слайд, тогда ты понимаешь, как ты к нему выруливаешь. И вот я забыл, как это делать, когда ты показываешь презентацию в режиме полного экрана.
Насколько я знаю, я не знаю такой, короче, функции в PowerPoint.
Да, она есть, точно, она есть.
Ну, Google Form.
Она есть. Да, просто так вот, когда слайд запускаю, он вот только есть. Так. Would like to access the microphone. Microsoft PowerPoint would like to access the microphone. А зачем? Он сабтайтлы может так показывать. Так, сабтайтлы я понял.
Alexander, we have first.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Скрин. Это просто листать. Окей.
So, good morning. Let's wait a little bit, few minutes.
Good morning. Oh, somebody in chat.
Alexander, please check your WhatsApp. I shared some screenshot how to make this function.
How
to use this function, yeah.
Режим докладчика. Режим докладчика. А где его нажать-то, режим докладчика? Сейчас я посмотрю, сейчас. Где у меня может быть режим докладчика? Tools.
Check WhatsApp. Alt plus F5.
Это где? Когда я запускаю презентацию, мне надо Alt plus
F5.
Alt plus F5. 3 buttons.
No, Alt and F5. I think we're ready to start, Alexander.
Да. Just a sec.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. We are ready to start.
Okay. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon for all participants of this webinar and who will watch this webinar in the record. Today, our 5th webinar, where Alexander explained us 4-wave concept, and topic of this webinar is energy. And I can share my few insights when we prepared to this webinar. I was very surprised what does exactly energy mean. I remember when I live in Shenzhen, it's China, Silicon Valley city and the hub of all new things. All taxi in Shenzhen last 5 years already, all electric. And everything is bus also electric. And when you live in Shenzhen, you see that the future is already here. And I was thinking like, wow, everything is already here, and energy problem we maybe easily to solve if China already solved it for their country and they help for many other countries, etc. But then Alexander totally create a new understanding. What is it energy? What is the impact of electricity, and how all this energy problem and opportunities influence to our current world, and how it will influence in the future. So Alexander, please share with us 4-waves approach in energy topic.
Yeah, hi everybody. But I need to share screen, to screen share.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't see where to do this.
As usually, if you...
No, because I don't see the... Okay, now I see... Okay.
You just need to back zoom from PowerPoint.
Yes. Now I see it. Yes. Oh, if I show like this, is better or no? The full screen is better. What do you think?
Full screen is better. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hi everybody. Today I will try to do 2 important things. The first, like Ainar said, I will tell you about the topic of energy consumption. and the role of energy in the life of our society. And I will tell you about the past, the present, and the future of energy. And the second thing, I would try to demonstrate you how the 4-wave approach and method could help you understand much better and much clearer the past, the present, and the future, not in terms of only energy, but in all other topics we're discussing here. So that is two main goals. Talking about energy, we couldn't overestimate the role of this revolution, what had happened for the last 250 years. This revolution started as the great transition, how we call this, transition from agrarian era to urban industrial modern era. It started in 18th century in Great Britain, in Western Europe and Northern Europe. And it started from innovation of a new pair. The technology could use the energy carrier. And this innovation was the so-called the steam machine. And this invention was done during 100 years, maybe. So many different engineers or inventors, practitioners, they tried to improve this technology. And the first industrial revolution, which happened in Great Britain, so it was the revolution of coal and steam machine, steam engine. And before this revolution happened, the whole history of humanity, we used only muscles, our own muscles, and muscles of domesticated animals like horses and different kind of cattle. So, and we had very little energy in terms of efficiency, in terms of work, what we could done. If you need, I don't know, to reach somebody from 10 miles from you, you need to spend maybe 2 hours running or walking or something like this. And if you use like modern car, it takes, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. So same distance, but very different efficiency. So that means from this point, based on my guru in this topic, Václav Smil, I could say that the energy and this combination of the technology and energy carrier is the foundation of the great transition. Without energy, without this invention to use the steam from and to convert the steam to useful energy, to useful work, like rotation or like another motions, we could not increase GDP, increase productivity. We could not invent a lot of another technologies and engines what we created for the next during the next 200 years. So I could say that this invention was the most fundamental change for our prosperity for the last 250 years. And there is a strong correlation for the last like 100 years at least between the GDP growth and the volume of energy what countries are using. And if you could see here, and this correlation is clear. You could not build the new factory if you don't have the coal for this factory or the electricity for this factory. You could not build the city if you don't have electricity and power plant for this city. So that means that every time what you want to increase the economic product or GDP, you need to build or you need to have the energy resource for producing energy for this consumer, like industry or residential sector or transportation sector or like this. But you need to remember that this started in 18th century. So we had only horses and we didn't have urbanization and we didn't have cars and everything. And during the 19th century, all the most important inventions in this sphere, in the sphere of technology and energy carriers were done. And when we are talking about the importance of energy for our progress, we could use the Human Development Index, and using this, we could see that 80% of population right now are living below the level of which is enough to become the modern country. And right now, the world is having energy based on burning, for 80% burning hydrocarbons. During the 19th century, people used coal. Then at the end, starting from the mid 19th century, people started to use oil, and then later they started to use natural gas. But right now, like maybe from middle of 20th century, the hydrocarbons gave to the world more than 90% of the energy. So we could say that we've built the hydrocarbon-based society and economies. And from this circle, we could see that more than 80% are hydrocarbons, oil, coal, and natural gas, and 20% is electricity. If you see the final consumption, this is electricity, and in terms of energy, what we are using now, only 20% from this energy is electricity, and another bulks of energy we receive from the direct burning of oil, coal, and natural gas. And I will show you, I will explain you briefly. For example, maybe you understand it, we use about 55% of the extracted oil for transportation, for all kinds of transportation, for passengers cars, for diesel tractors, for ships, for aviation, for everything. So the oil and oil products become the most convenient source for internal combustion engine and for diesel engine. And the gas and another 45% we use in industries like petro industry and the plastic industry and all others. So the natural gas we are using, the 40% we are using burning in power plants to produce electricity, and another parts we are using in industry. For example, 5% of extracted gas we are using to produce ammonia or nitrogen fertilizers for the world. And without this fertilizer, 40% of people couldn't have food for them, couldn't produce food enough. And the coal, for 70%, coal is burning in power plants to produce electricity and heat. And the rest are using in industry, and the most consuming coal industry is metallurgical. Steel production, two-thirds of steel production based on a blast furnace technology, which use 1 billion ton a year of coal or coking coal to produce steel. And then cement industry, and then paper, and the other industries. So that's how we use three most important energy resources for our humanity, which give us, even now, more than 80% a year energy. And there are more complicated explanations how the natural gas and electricity and oil are using by the end users. And these diagrams are called the Sunkay diagrams, and they are for most countries in the world, but you could look at it. But if we go to the history, we could look at this diagram, we could see that for at least 100 years, maybe 150 years, for the most developed countries, from the first wave, for Great Britain, for Germany, for France, for Portugal, for Belgium, for all European countries and the US and Canada, and the coal was the foundation of a prosperity and economic growth. You see, before the coal, before people started to use coal, they used like animal muscles, human muscle, firewood, and a little bit wind and water, like cereal mills and the other equipment. But starting using coal, they invented steam machine, then they invented locomotive, they invented railroad system, and this system like helped to domesticate the North America and the other countries during the 19th century, and so forth, so forth. And only after that, the oil added to this energy balance, and then another resources. And if we look at the whole 200-year history, we could see that interesting thing that during all these 200 years, the world is still using the traditional biofuels or firewoods in the level like it was 200 years ago. These interesting differentiations of the world we need to understand better, and that is why the 4Waves method we invented. And then the coal started to rise, and then oil added to coal, and then natural gas added to coal and natural gas and the oil, and then new renewables and hydro and nuclear added. So this progress was huge. The humanity jumped from, I don't know, less than 10,000 terawatt hour to more than 140 terawatt hour today. And you could use exajoules, tons of oil equivalent, and different scales, but the numbers are the same. So this revolution gave us the energy in a volume what is like 4 times more than we had in ever before in the history. We had like 23 gigajoule per capita, and now we have more than 80 gigajoule. And it looks like 4 times only, but this difference is huge. Because like we said, in an agrarian society, the economy never had a GDP per capita more than $600 per capita. And now we have $60,000 per capita. So this jump we never do if we don't have enough energy and different energy resources. And these energy resources gave us the chance to produce different technologies, equipment, tool, washing machine, like air conditioner and everything. And now I will tell you how the next step in the history happened. Because as I said, the first wave countries started to use coal, oil, and natural gas during 19th and the first half of the 20th century. And when we go to 1965, or because we have a statistic, unfortunately, for many parameters, we have statistics only from 1960 or 1970 or something like this. But if we go to the mid of 20th century, we could see that the red color is the color when the energy per capita. So that means that that energy per capita is the highest. So this is North America, Europe, Australia, and a little bit Argentina, and South Africa. And that's country we call like first wave countries. These countries in the mid of 20th century were developed in terms of a number of energy, of volume of energy they used. So they used coal, they had power plants, they had the blast furnace factories, they produced enough steel, they made urbanization, they had cars, they made this transportation revolution, they did everything before the mid of the last century. But starting 1965, the new revolution happened. So the world was in this level, and the second wave countries were to another 1 billion lived were much lower. And then these countries started to rise. In this statistic, what I use from our world data, the Asia Pacific is like one region. But in our classification, Asia Pacific include the countries from a second and a third wave countries. Same Middle East and South and Central America or Latin America. So there are countries from second and third waves in these regions, but using these regions, we could see that North America and Europe, so these regions were the most developed in the mid of 20th century. These regions increased but a little bit the energy during this the last 60 years. But the Asia region, so the second and the third wave countries, grow significantly, and the other regions, you could not see it clear in this scale of a graph, but Middle East and Latin America grew significantly. And if we look at this number, we could see, if you make this simple math, you could see that in 1965, the first wave countries was 80% from the world energy consumption. And the rest of the world, with the 2 billion people at the rest of the world, they were 20%. And if we jump to now, from after these 60 years, we could see that that right now the Asia and the Middle East and Latin America together, they have a share of 60% in the world, and the first wave countries only 30%. And there was a very little progress in Africa during these 50 years, and I will tell you about this a little bit later. So during, if you look at these graphs of the main hydrocarbons, main energy resources, you could see that only Asia share increased during these last 60 years significantly. All other regions were a little bit, had the same share, and Latin America grew up a little bit faster than the North America and the Europe. And the same with coal. So the consumption of oil was the most growth was in Asia, and the natural gas. But the natural gas started in the early decade of 20th century, and now it grew up, and I will tell you about the future. And if we make this math, these calculations, and if you overlook on these 60 years of the progress, we could see that the share of first wave countries decreased from 80% in 1965 to 20% in present, and the share of a second wave country grew up from 10% to 60%. So this is a huge progress in the second wave countries. This is another way to understand where the growth was the fastest. And in this graph, you could see that the Middle East, Asia Pacific, and even Africa grew up much faster than the first wave countries during the last 60 years. But you need to remember that during these 60 years, the first wave countries consumed the energy at the level much higher than all other regions in terms of energy per capita. This is the most important parameter we could, which will help us to understand better the future. And I will give you the extraordinary example of the progress in China for the last 40 years. Why is it important? These 40 years. Because when we are talking about the 21st century, and when sometimes I'm talking that in 40 years in several countries and even in several regions, the progress could be extraordinary. People could say, oh, it's unbelievable, it's impossible. It's possible, because we have these examples in the second wave countries like China, and more or less same. And we saw in Brazil, Mexico, Turkey, Egypt. We could take a lot of countries from the second wave, and some of them demonstrated the same amazing results, like Singapore. Singapore is a small country with 5 million people of population, but it jumped like a rocket. And the most important revolution China made at the end of last century, it was the revolution in consuming coal. Before this, China has its own coal fields and resources, and it produced coal, extracted it. But starting the end of the last 20th century, the world consumption from 2000 to 2013, the world coal consumption jumped for 75%. So it looks like it doubled for the world. But if we look at on the world through the prism of different countries and different waves, we could understand that this jump, this doubling, was 100% from China. China made the huge coal-based revolution. They built a lot of blast furnace factories, and they started to produce steel, and now China produced 60% of the world steel. So that means that China produced more steel than the rest of the world, including first, third, and fourth wave countries. And China built for these 20 years, China urbanized more than 500 million people. So China moved them from country village to the new cities. And these cities needed electricity, and China built around 1 terawatt of a coal-based fire power plants. So this revolution was the foundation of the economic progress for China for the last 40 years. If you look at this energy balance of China in 1980, so in the beginning of this revolution, you will see the very big green line. Green line is a biomass. So that means that at the beginning of this revolution, China used a lot of firewood for energy producing, for heating, for cooking, for heating buildings and so forth, and a little bit coal. And if you look at the 40 years later, you could see the very narrow line, green line. It's still the China use this firewood, but in a very little volume. And you could see the huge line of a gray line. It's a coal, huge blue, it's gas and oil. So China extended the energy resources, significantly extended the volume of consumption and the scale of the number of resources. And if we look at these figures, I summarized them in this table. The growth for these 40 years is amazing. 20x times, 20-fold increase in energy consumption, in electricity consumption, per capita consumption, and in any parameter which is the characteristic of energy consumption, like total energy consumption, electricity consumption, installed capacity. So that means the power plants, coal-based, hydro, nuclear, and so on. And so that gave a chance to increase 10 times for these 40 years GDP per capita. This is the most important parameter, which means that, which is the main characteristic of this great transition from agrarian era. And China was an agrarian era in the mid of last century. The 500 million people lived in agrarian era. 90% of people lived in country village. And now 1 billion people lived in the cities. This progress based not totally, but mostly on hydrocarbons and this coal revolution China made in the last. And if we look at the forecast, what China government sometimes disclose, we could see that they assume that for the next 20 years, China will increase energy demand for another 30%. And China will increase its power plants capacity or installed capacity from existing 1.7 terawatt, and it was just a second. It was yeah, I will be. It was only 66,000 megawatts of installed capacity 40 years ago. So it's amazing progress what China did in terms of building power plants, and they are going to increase for another 1 terawatt. So terawatt, the whole Europe has 1 terawatt of power plants. The United States has 1 terawatt of power plants, and China wants to install 1 terawatt more power plants for the next 20 years. And China wants to double the energy. Just a second. I need to move our. Yeah, the whole world in 1970 produced or consumed 4,000 gigaton of oil equivalent of energy. And China expected to reach this number in 2040. So China in 2040 will consume the same number of energy what the whole world consumed 50 years ago. So, and the last not the least, China now is #1 in terms of electricity producing, like in total. It produced 6,000 terawatt hour of electricity. And the China wants to double this number of electricity by 2050 until 12,000 terawatt hour. So these figures are amazing, and it looks like, I like this graph because this graph showed that really 500 years ago, that China was #1 or #2 with India economy in the world. 500 years ago, in the agrarian era, China and India were the great civilizations, the great agrarian civilizations. Then they lost during the Industrial Revolution and the great transition over Western countries. They lost their share in the world economy. They lost their leadership, and now it looks like they're extending their share in the world economy, and they look at this like, okay, our leadership coming back. But if we look at India is from a third wave country. India's plans to quadruple total energy use in the next 30 years by 2047. And of course, they understand that the coal share will be at least at the level of 50%. I will describe much more in detail why we could not build the prosperity in the 21st century for the third and fourth wave countries without coal. Because for many technologies like steel making, for example, there are no so-called clean technologies right now. And the progress is so fast that the countries from third and fourth wave, they need to build these new factories, to build new cities right now. So they're using the dirty technologies or the polluting technologies what we have right now. And another fantastic announcement what Indian government made, like they want to install to increase the power plants volume or installed capacity of power plants from 360 gigawatt what they have now to 1.7 terawatt what like China has now, because Indian population is same like China, and India understand that if you want to have GDP growth, if you have to urbanize 1 billion people who are now living in the urban, in a agrarian era, in a country village. So you need much more energy and especially electricity, because electricity is crucial for urbanization. And same trends, for sure, I could guarantee. I don't give you this huge number of data, but same trends we could see in Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and countries from even from the second wave, and especially the third and fourth wave countries. If we try to understand the rest of the 21st century, the future, what I try to do for many, many years, I read a lot of reports from World Bank, from International Energy Agency, from United Nations, from BP, and I couldn't understand this data. Why? Because this whole statistic, what you could see in these reports, based on this view on the world like one big piece. And if you look at the projection of BP by 2040, you could see that the global energy consumption will increase only for 1.3x, so for 30% from today. It looks like not so much progress, yeah, not so like amazing progress like we looked before. But then we could remember, okay, India wants to quadruple the energy consumption by 2050. And China wants at least like to double or to increase for 50–60% its energy consumption. But you couldn't see it in this diagram. If you go to this diagram from energy from EIA, I forgot this administration, yeah. You could see the map of the world. It's much more interesting figures because from these figures you could see the huge growth of demand from India, okay, the huge growth in China, less, but still a huge growth in Middle East and Africa, and even in Central and South America, but the United States with minus, Europe with minus, and Japan with minus, and Australia with minus. So that means that from this view, you could see that, okay, the world is not like one piece. And in some countries, for the next 20 years, the Energy Agency suppose that they will not grow, but they will even decrease the energy consumption. But the other countries will increase. And the most important and the most like useful role of this 4-wave method is in this for this application. So if you want to understand better the future in the 21st century, you need to see this huge difference, or I like to say it like a gap, between the first wave countries, the level of energy consumption, and the same in the food consumption and green gases pollution, and same picture you will see in all these parameters. The huge gap between the first wave countries and the second, third, and fourth wave countries. And this difference, if you look again, like for 60 years ago, in 1965, this difference was huge for all this, for all countries from the second, third. The second wave countries had a 10x difference with the first wave, and the third 16, and the fourth wave, sub-Saharan Africa, had a difference 200 times. So that means that the first wave countries had enough energy to build the modern society, and sub-Saharan Africa didn't have any energy resources, but they had only mussels and firewoods, or traditional biomass. But now we see that the second wave countries, not in terms of GDP per capita, this is a different parameter, but in terms of energy per capita, the second wave countries are very close to the level of European countries. And if we look at the next 20 or 30 years, we could see that by 2050, many countries from the second wave will over jump the level of Europe. because they are building more advanced infrastructure, energy infrastructure in their countries, especially like China and so forth. And the third wave countries still have a difference like 5x. And the fourth wave countries, sub-Saharan Africa, has a 40 times. So they need to grow 40 times in terms of construction of energy infrastructure and to reach the level of the first wave countries. If we look at the different map, you remember I gave you like very similar map a couple slides ago. But if you look at the map using our figures, you could see that the North America, with a population of 350 million people, has a 88 megawatt hour per capita of energy consumption. And sub-Saharan Africa, with 1 billion population, same like China, same like India, has only 1 megawatt megawatt hour per capita. So this is 400 times different, or this is 90 times different. And with European countries, 30 times different. And if we understand this amazing gap, we understand that naturally or evolutionary, the main growth in energy consumption and energy demand, the main construction of energy infrastructure, including coal power plants, including blast furnace factories, including cement production, including urbanization. And it will happen in the third and the fourth wave countries in the 21st century. And it doesn't matter that the world will increase only for 30 or 40%. For 2 billion people, this will be quadruple of energy consumption. And for 1 billion people, it will be like 10-fold growth of energy consumption. So don't look at the world like one piece. Look at the 4 different types of countries in terms of their evolutionary progress. And of course, by the end of the 21st century, if you look at the typical energy balance of country from sub-Saharan Africa, like Ethiopia, you see this is 90% of energy in this country they have from burning so-called like traditional biofuels, and they use it for cooking, and they use it for heating, and use it for lighting, and for melting something. But of course, they need to build the new energy infrastructure using coal, oil, gas, and the other resources. And we will talk about this in the next couple webinars when we start to talk about climate change and how we could fix it using like new green technologies and so forth. But you need to understand that globally, for third and fourth countries, the growth in energy demand in the 21st century, the rest of the 21st century, is inevitable, unstoppable, and predictable. And now we could, I like to make this like big, the math for the big picture for the 21st century. And the main question is not like how much energy, how much will grow energy demand by 2040 or by 2050. I like to go from the top. If we agree that during this great transition, all countries by the end of 21st century, my projection is that by the end of 21st century, it's very real. Most countries in the world will make this great transition from agrarian era to modern era. So that means that they will build urbanized, industrialized, high energy consuming economies with the power plants, with the cities, with the electricity, with the cars, with the transportation system, with everything. How much energy do we need for this world? And you remember I showed you this graph with the different countries, the progress for the last 60 years, and I showed that North America and Europe didn't grow in terms of energy consumption, even they started to decrease this consumption of energy. That means that the level what they reach is the maximum. We don't need more energy. We could say that this is maximum level, this is peak, and after this peak, the first wave countries could even decrease the consumption of energy. But the third and fourth will, of course, will significantly increase. But at the end, if we look at the world of 10 billion, we could see today the world energy consumption is 150,000 terawatt hour. Like different countries from the first wave, I said, like Europe 31, Germany in Europe 44, and the US 88. So let's take 40 megawatt hour per capita, like normal, comfortable level of energy consumption for the modern country. And if we take 10 billion people, we could see that we need 400,000 terawatt hour per year. Now we have 150 and we need 400. So that means that for the 21st century, we need additionally 250,000 terawatt hour. But we understand that the first wave country don't need more energy, but they need at least same level of energy they have now. So the third wave country will get 2.5 billion people soon. And if we make this math, so we will see that third wave country will need 82,000 terawatt hour more energy than they have now. And the fourth wave country, Sub-Saharan Africa, where we have now population 1 billion, and by the end of 21st century, according to the United Nations forecast, there will be 4 billion people. So the Sub-Saharan region with 4 billion people needs 160,000 terawatt hour of energy. Same amount what the whole world consumes today, you see? That means that for the rest of the 21st century, the main growth of energy consumption, the main growth of energy infrastructure, we will see in the third and the fourth wave countries, and they need to build the infrastructure much bigger than the whole world has today. So that's the main conclusion, what you need to remember when you look at this like short-term focus by 2050, 2040, and so forth. And when you see that the world will consume 30% more energy, don't let to misguide you. Don't believe that this is the true number, because the world is very different, and the parts of the world will grow rapidly during the whole century. And the same when we think about electrification, because like when we're talking about green transition, I will tell about this in the next webinar. We're thinking that the green transition means that we will go 100% to electricity from clean technologies like coal and wind and some other clean technologies. And but you remember that in an energy balance, the electricity today gives us only 20% of energy, and we have 23,000 terawatt hour of electricity per year, and we have 7 terawatt installed capacity in terms of power plants in the world. So as I said, 1 terawatt in the US, 1 terawatt in Europe, 2 terawatts in China, and so 7 terawatt. So that means that if we believe that we need 400,000 terawatt hour of electricity, that means that we need 17 or like 20 times more power plants that we have now. So we need 120 terawatt of installed capacity in terms of traditional power plants like coal-fired power plants and the gas turbine power plants. And another aspect we need to remember, coal-fired power plant has an efficiency or load factor 45%. So that means that it produces like the efficiency, it produces 45% energy from 100% of burned coal. And gas turbine has a much higher efficiency, but this is the peak of existing technologies. It's 60, and some of them 65%. This is a maximum. But the existing renewable technologies like solar and wind have an efficiency less than 20%, very often 10%. So that means that if we believe that we could cover the world demand for 400,000 terawatt hour of electricity using wind and solar, we need to have installed capacity not 120 terawatt, what is absolutely unbelievable, but we need 4 times more, 500 terawatt of installed capacity. Like if you ask any like electrician guys or any like engineers, they will never believe in these figures, but that's a reality. That's the reality in the 21st century. So that's my main conclusion, that that all countries are going through this great transition from agrarian era to modern era, and they made the same sub-transitions like demographic transition, dietary transition, energy transition, and they are building the modern societies and modern countries based on energy infrastructure. They build power plants, they build metallurgical factories, they increase GDP per capita. People with increasing wealth, they could buy cars, passenger cars, and they could fly using aviation and so forth. So the energy for modern society is incredibly important, but you need to understand the global picture for the 21st century. The challenge we have in the 21st century, without problem of climate change, without discussing what kind of technology we will use, more clear or less clear, the challenge we have is extremely difficult. And this challenge is growing from the progress of the second, third, and fourth wave countries. And so you have to remember this important fact. Thank you for this.
Alexander, it was super great. I just now realized a few things, even we prepared a few times. Alexander, I have few questions, okay, before you will leave, because I think everybody think about this, and I will give you example. Based in India experience, they start the, let's say, modern era, not from computers or laptops, they immediately get the mobile phones. And a company named Geo, one of the most inspiring company for me and most interesting ecosystem company, they build just within few years whole new infrastructure of a telecom industry, and that was help to India quickly move from mobile phone, even early adopters of mobile phones, with a super aggressive users of mobile phones, very aggressive users, and now they use all IT and internet ecosystem very quickly. So they jump to the latest stage and latest technologies, and the speed of internet increased few times in India. And I remember the day when was woke up and Bangalore was wholly in the advertising of this new system, because it was free. Free calls, free SMS, and just you pay for internet. And that's first example. Second example is almost the same in Indonesia. So my question is, can we jump in the third and fourth wave countries, immediately for the most advanced and most latest technologies, and because of the latest and most eco reduce influence of the impact to the greenhouse emission and coal demand, do you think it's possible to jump the same as they did in the telecom industry, and not I couldn't say e-commerce ecosystem, yeah, but in telecom industry they definitely did it.
As I said, my guru in energy topic is Václav Smil, and if I didn't read Václav Smil books, I was much more optimistic about the possibility to accelerate this progress and to jump from zero, like sub-Saharan Africa, to like Germany, yeah, to build the economy like German, but without power plants, without steel melting and everything. But now I understand much better that in industrial technologies, the speed of scaling up, first of all, not invention. The invention is not the most important part in terms of industrial and energy infrastructure building and changing. If we have the technology, to spread this technology takes dozens of years. So you imagine, China built 1 terawatt of coal power plants for the last 20 years. So that means that these power plants need to work at least another 20, 30 years, because this is $1 trillion investments, and investors which invested in these power plants, they need return their investment. So, and the return their investment, they expect like to have in 40 years, for example. Same steel furnace blast furnace technologies. If you build this factory, you expect it to use this for, I don't know, 40, 50 years again. And that is the main problem in a discussion with the techno-optimists and the people who are from IT and communication world, yeah, who believe that, okay, we could replace all these coal-based and oil-based technologies and engines and equipment, what we're using right now, like in decade. It's impossible. Unfortunately, it's impossible. That is why the challenge we have in the 21st century is extremely difficult. Even more, I could say, I worked with my co-author on the book for the last 6 years, and we did a lot of this. We had a draft of this book with 2,000 pages, and we did a lot of smart calculations. And we calculated based on a known data of resources of oil and gas and coal at the earth, in the ground, yeah? How much energy do we need for the 21st century? And when we did this math, we understood how much energy do we need, we divided on the data from a known resources of traditional and non-traditional resources of oil and natural gas. And we realized that in the 21st century, we need to extract all known resources of oil and gas to cover this demand for the 21st century. We are not talking about the green transition. We are talking about demand. And that's the main mistake what people quite often, especially the people from the first wave countries, like from the Europe, from North America, because they don't understand what kind of boom are now like developing in the third and fourth wave countries. I don't know when African countries reach the level of European countries, in 40 years or in 80 years, but it will not happen in 300 years. it will happen much, much faster. I believe that in 80 years, by the end of 21st century, that's possible. Even now, we could see from OECD forecast that many countries from the second wave and even from a third wave by 2050 will reach the level of GDP per capita like European countries have now, $40,000 per capita. And now these countries have like 10,000, 15,000, and in 30 years, they will make the great progress. And that's more complicated picture than in telecommunication and then in IT world what we have.
Alexander, about techno-optimist, this happened today. Elon Musk announced new gigafactory in Australia, producing a lot of energy. And I remember his words like a few years ago when they just finished the building of first gigafactory, like, oh, we need just 100 of them in the whole world. And the problem of the energy will be mostly solved. And from his math, it's look like very simple. Okay, 1 gigafactory produce this amount of resources and impact to the whole demand and the supply. And that's why we need this 100 of them, and we will totally solve the problem. And they have a good results in Australia, but all of these results is in the very small scale if we comparing the slides what you just shared with us. What do you think about these activities like a gigafactory? And let's say if the world focus on these solutions, can it help us at least to reduce some problems? Or anyway, even they will achieve the maximum of capacity, we will still have just a drop in the whole ocean of the problems?
Yeah, I'm happy to create some joint venture or think tank with Elon Musk, because we both are worried about future, and we both are thinking and are working on solving this potential catastrophe or collapse what we see in the future. But what's the problem of what's the Elon Musk like obvious problem? First of all, he is a good salesperson, so he's in the business. He raised money from venture investors and from like long-term investors, and of course he needs to boost his technologies, his inventions, and the impact what these inventions will make on the earth. But I like to create like maybe more closed war room or war think tank where people like Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Ainar or another great people like Václav Smil and so forth, they could look at this data I showed you, I gave you. I'm sure that Elon Musk, if I ask to Elon Musk like in a real discussion, not in from a public, not in a stage, yeah, but in a real discussion. Okay, let's make this math on a globe. In sub-Saharan, understanding the sub-Saharan Africa situation now with the growing population, the situation in South Africa, the situation in the third wave countries from Latin America and so forth, how we could produce 400,000 terawatt hour of energy. Is it possible? And this discussion will be much less optimistic and much less like, oh, like we will solve this problem. We don't know. Could we solve it or not? So that means that there is a big difference between like listening to people who are speaking and have this obligations for investors, for their technologies and so forth, and listening to people like Václav Smil who are non-partisan, they are independent researchers, and they could only say, okay, I don't believe it in this speed, and I don't believe that these technologies will help us. And the problem is that that these individuals, they're so great like individuals, but we need to create the huge collaboration. In this collaboration, we need heroes, but we don't need one hero. And this, because this one hero every time will overboost himself, because that's the law of marketing, so unfortunately.
Okay.
And of course, these kind of technologies like Tesla, passenger car, and the gigafactories are important, but they're not a solution. That's a problem. That's one of main goal of my passion, of my work for this dozen of years, for the book I'm working on, for this webinar series. I want to create the new level of understanding of the challenge what we're facing, and to start this discussion in the next level, not in a level of selling something, but in a level of a real, like reinventing the world and reinventing the way how we developing.
You just mentioned the Bill Gates, as we discussed a few days ago about his green premium concept. He, as I understood, again from basic perspective here, so we have some very polluted technologies and energy, and we have some less polluted technologies or more green. And the difference between the price in the market, he called it as a green premium. And the concept is we should cover in somehow this green premium, or we should punish the companies with the bad technologies to increase the price and be at least more equal or more closer to the price of green technologies. So, but it's the concept is from one angle is simple. From another angle, is even I know it's more than 20, 30, 40 years we discuss about the taxes, about the
carbon tax, yeah.
Urban tax, and so different type of taxes or some tariffs, special tariffs in the different countries is different name. But what is new here and why you think the concept of green premium is so interesting to Bill Gates, and he even write the whole book about it?
I could say that as for me, Bill Gates is one of the best and one of the smartest and one of my hero from the business people, because his passion and his long-term focusing on solving these global problems and deep involving in understanding and learning these problems is amazing. So if we have, like, I don't know, 10 people from a top 100 from Forbes list like Bill Gates, yeah, I'm sure we will see much more promising progress. But what I don't see in the Bill Gates activity, unfortunately, he behaves like an investor. So because he's from business world, he tries not to talk about, for example, the roadmap for the world, the roadmap for the 4Waves countries. He's talking about technologies because he's investing in technologies, and he believes that if we raise enough money and if we flood the great smartest engineers with this money, they will invent everything we need fast, and then we will scale up these new technologies and we will change the situation. I have another mindset. So for me, one of the most important part, what Bill Gates miss and Elon Musk miss, and most other people who are talking about this technological shift what we need to do. I'm interested to create the roadmap for the next 80, maybe 100 years for the world, for 4Waves countries. I need to understand more or less clear how we could help to these countries for the third and fourth wave countries to grow up from and to transit from agrarian era where they are living now to modern era, to increase the consumption of food, to increase energy consumption, to build their energy infrastructure, to make the huge urbanization for 4 billion people. This is the same number what we get now in already urbanized humanity, but we need at least 4 billion more people in urban.
It's even without new,
to urbanize.
newborn people.
And
even
when we start to work on this roadmap, we will understand much better all the challenges we have. And the climate change is not the biggest problem, and I will try to explain in the next series. But if we create this roadmap, we could see what role in this roadmap the wind and solar and hydrogen technologies are playing. Maybe we will find something much more important. For example, we will find that we could not solve this problem to cover the demand of 400,000 terawatt hour. And we need to, I don't know, to cut our consumption of electricity and energy at all, to cut it, to give, I don't know, to distribute this energy for like on a payment system or something like this. So that is much more important discussion. What I didn't find right now, or I didn't find till now, and I think that we need to create this new point of view in this discussion.
Thank you, Alexander. So if participants have the questions, please just send it in the chat box. And one of my last, let's say, question or the feedback, I remember when first time I realized the concept of 4Waves. And maybe you remember it, I mentioned to in our talk, in our discussion, that maybe 4Waves approach will be the communication infrastructure, where all these governments and billionaires and all activities, all
activists, genius, engineers, inventors.
They together can finally understand this world correctly, and based on figures, real data, not just emotions or geopoliticals, or just because of the history of this question, or because of respect for some scientists. No, just because this is how exactly world is look like, and it's not just some kind of your beliefs. It's based on the figures, and these figures is proved this concept of 4Waves. So, and again, I just want to mention, I realized how it's important. And even sometime when I watch some basic movie, today I watched documentary film about Sweden. And you know, if 2 years ago I watched this movie, I was like, wow, they have a so energy good impact to
Smart.
the green things. They how to they reuse trash for the biogases to the buses, etc. And now we watch it today with my wife, and she know, like, I'm involved to the 4Waves now, and she asked me, okay, what do you think about this? And I told, first of all, it's a very traditional first wave country. Tens of years ago, they already passed the investment returns for the basic electricity on all infrastructure. Now they can reinvest this the money to all new advanced stuff. And because the energy not grow, they can do it very easily. This is first. Second, H&M, one of the most polluted company in the world, like a Zara and like a other oil.
All clothes company, all clothes company are very polluted.
Yes, and now Sweden people, they believe H&M is a kind of iconic brand of them, and they proud of it. And but if they will realize the environment approach, and how this influence, and where they produce this, they produce in third and fourth wave countries this clothes, not in the heart of the Sweden. No, they produce it there. So they will be surprised. And third, I mentioned to her, like they have this money. They have less and less people.
Yeah, they have GDP $60,000 per capita, not 6,000.
They have a low, the big taxes, and they already passed a lot of steps. What all countries just in the process of started this process, and she also like, wow, it's totally different approach. It's not something you should proud about Sweden, or you should let's say be happy of them or judge them. It's just the reality. They started 200 years ago, even more, Sweden more. So it's just a very organic, but also we should be respectful with the countries with the third and fourth wave. They just in the beginning, and they are not different. They just in the beginning. And one of the last point, and I will read the questions. I mentioned to my wife, Indian and African people, absolutely the same, like a Sweden person. The difference is they born in different countries with a different situation, and they born
with a different evolutionary past, with a different
evolutionary past. But if you put any Indian or African people to there, or any Chinese, like rural,
we have a lot of people in the Western countries.
Yes, it will be the same. So, and this is very important to understand, because still now our world is very, how to say, sometimes too aggressive to each other. And especially last years, And again, I think 4Waves approach can easily explain by simple words why and how it's happened, and it will happen with all other countries. And it's our choice. We will help them to avoid all our mistakes, the first wave country mistakes, and to get most advanced technologies, methods. And
this is not a mistake, because all our industrial technologies were invented 150 years ago, and they didn't change. So these genius people did a great job for the whole world. They
already did,
in locomotive, power plants, electricity, everything. And nothing happened for the last 100 years in terms of industrial inventions. So it's not a mistake. This was the step in our evolution.
Totally agree. Again, thank you for this. Again, very important point. So because sometimes we are too aggressive to our past. And
we are blaming Cole. We are blaming Cole sitting in these comfortable apartments or houses now. But I show you, 150 years ago, the coal was everything. It was everything. It gave a work for a locomotive, for industrialization, for factories, for electricity production, for everything. Without coal, we could not build our modern developed civilization. So that's what we shouldn't forget.
You just remind me about the Greta, How dare you are? And this, I can understand this question, but again, it shows like, she not see the whole picture. She just blame us, adult people, and more previous generation. She blamed them all what we did with our Earth.
But
we
she's
didn't.
scared, but she's afraid about future. So
Yeah.
we could not give her the clear answer. That is why I'm talking that we need to create this 100-year program for finishing the transition for the whole humanity and for building the prosperous world in the 22nd century, the next century, not this century. This century, we could not create the sustainable develop the sustainable world. We could not. We are in the most dangerous situation. The challenge, what we see behind us is an extraordinary.
Okay, so if there are no questions, Alexander, I want to say big thank you from my heart and from my brain. As usually, you inspire me and Marek and all our team to continue our work and to help this 4Waves approach go to the world and spread this idea. And my last, maybe optimistic, or let's say emotional approach. Just today, I read about some very unique, how to say, impulse from the universe, which happen very short, less than 1 second, but the energy what they give it just in these few seconds, it's more than 10,000 years of the sun. And today I realized, like, wow, it's a crazy idea. Just within less than a few milliseconds, you have this amount of energy. And then I was realized, and we already discovered it. It's give me a lot of hope. It's give me a lot of hope. If we already discovered so interesting, so important things.
Yeah, but the main problem in this discussion we have.
Yeah.
The people who understands the existing technologies, they understand that based on these existing technologies, we could not find a solution. And that is why people believe, like Bill Gates and the techno-optimists, much less educated than Bill Gates, they believe that we could invent very fast and spread and scale up very fast something absolutely new, what will help us to solve all our problems. It doesn't work, unfortunately. And when you're in discussion with these kind of people, you understand that you could not lead this discussion, because this discussion doesn't make sense. People believe that we could invent. Okay, maybe, but maybe not. And that is why I am not optimistic or pessimistic. I am like a fighter. But I understand that the challenge we see right now is extremely complicated. And this is the solution is not a short term. The solution is a long term.
Alexander, we have one question from our participants.
Pleasure.
Yes. Oh, okay. He wants to give us some feedback, but it's tough to type it.
Okay.
I think, Alexander, maybe 1 second, how I can do this. Alexander, you can give him permission to talk, and then he will have this.
Okay.
For Alexander Buydov.
How to do this?
You just need to open the participants, find this
just
person.
a second. Participants. Okay.
Then
Alex, find.
Yeah, type it to Alexander Buydov, and
I don't see. Okay.
And just give him permission.
I don't see him.
He's in participants, not in the organizers.
I see. Now I see it. And give him the permission.
To turn on microphone, yeah.
Allow attendants to chat or to...
Praveen, maybe you have your own thoughts. Just share it by voice. Alexander, could you also give it for Praveen too? Or you can give me organizer rights, and then I will do everything.
You need to teach me.
Yeah, so open me and do me
Just a second more. Make host?
Yeah, make host, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So
you could, sorry, you need to teach me after this.
2 people only now in the chat, so we can talk a little bit. So Praveen, Alexander, you are the last participant in the webinar, so let's see your feedback. We're ready.
Okay, are you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Okay, I try to get short feedback because last time you asked about it, but for me it's much better to switch to Russian. If the last participant, I think is
You're not the last. We also have Praveen, he from Silicon Valley, yeah. So we can talk in English, sorry. If not, if it's hard to you,
we could call you later, yeah.
Yeah, let me ask Praveen.
Yes, okay, maybe Praveen will first.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to understand what Alexander Voidov would like to say, but I'm happy to share my opinion. Ainar, one of the things that comes up when people talk about, say, Sweden or the first wave countries, and how everybody all around the world is the same, I have a problem with that.
Sure, please share with me.
And the reason I say that is because, like, are you familiar with the Eastern European car Yugo?
Eastern European what? Sorry?
Car, automobile.
Ah, car.
Yeah, it used to be known as Yugo.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it's a car with 4 wheels. It's got a steering wheel. It's got an engine. But it's not the same as a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW.
Yeah.
Right? So when we talk about all people everywhere are the same, I don't think we are. Like what Alexander spoke about, the evolutionary process that took place over 200 years, that creates a whole different animal. The way they look at life, the way we look at anything. I mean, just the idea that in our mind, we walk into a room and we throw a switch and the light comes on. That is still magic for most people in the world. You can't even wrap your mind around what a convenience that is. So when we do talk about making changes for people who are in the 4th wave, I think there's a huge gap in education. So when Alexander comes up with the idea and promotes the idea of the 100-year plan, I love that idea. As long as like 80% of that 100 years is on educating people, rather than just jumping straight into coming up with a solution with present-day technology, which we are already looking at and seeing has got its limitations. So I'm not sure if I'm being clear in what I'm saying, but
yeah, it's absolutely clear. It's absolutely clear, Praveen, and that's the great question. But we have an answer because we know the history way for the last at least 100 years. And from this history, we could look at any country from the 2nd wave, from any country, like Russia at the beginning of 20th century, Brazil, Mexico, China, and 50 or 80 countries in the world. They had a 95% of a population not urbanized, but living in the agrarian era. They worked in the field. Their diet was the cereals and the roots. They didn't have any energy. They didn't use coal. They were illiterate, uneducated, and so. And in 50 years, what we saw in these countries, progress. Every time, progress. If you look at our world in data database right now, like 50%, they have a special they have a special part like sustainable development goals. And if you look at this part, they have a lot of graphs of the level of education in different countries in different time. And according to this part, you could see, wow, like they expect to urbanize 1 billion people in the next 30 years. They expect to educate 1 billion people in the next 30 years. They expect to build power plant and steel melting infrastructure because they need to have this to urbanize this. I know a lot of people from different sub-Saharan Africa countries from their governments. Most of them have education. They have a higher or have a university education from UK, Austria, US, and other countries. So these people are extremely educated. They're same educated like the people from a government of Japan, of China, of the US, and so forth. So you couldn't say that they're uneducated. When Singapore started it, how much people were educated? When China started. So that's the amazing change in your mindset you could make when you go through the same path what I did for the last 10 years. Because 10 years ago, when I started, I didn't know anything about China, India, and Africa. I had several informational wrong puzzles in my mind because I was not interested in this to learn about these countries, about their history, about their progress, and so forth. But when I started to learn, and I spent 90% of my everyday routine reading these publications, reading these books, reading these reports, and reading this. And after 10 years of this research, I realized I was completely uneducated in the most important topics. For me, I was a top manager of one of the 6 biggest electricity company in the world. I was the second in command. It was easy to manage to these 1 million people to produce electricity and so forth. But I was like the first grade student in the elementary school because I didn't know about world, anything. That is one of the main problems what like adults, like I was, like investors, top managers in a big corporation they have. They are the first class students in all these topics. They are great in physics, though they could be great in something else, but they don't understand the world. That is why I am working on this educational course, because I want to spread this understanding and this picture. And you could believe or disbelieve with me, but it doesn't matter. You could not say that we don't have in Africa at least 10 countries with GDP per capita now $20,000, which are very developed, which have the extremely smart governments and the election system and so forth. And a lot of countries like failed states, of course, because the history of this continent is extremely different than we have in Europe or in Asia. But what I believe that in terms of the great transition from agrarian era to modern, they will build the same economies with the same energy infrastructure, with the same cities infrastructure, with the same educational system, with the same contraception system, with the same medicine and so forth. It will take maybe 60 years, maybe 800, but it's possible because we know from the last 60 years, the huge progress what different countries made. And that makes me like absolutely believers in this progress.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. The education I was talking about was not of the leaders in the countries,
I agree.
as much as in
Yeah.
all people. You know,
Yeah.
educating in such a way that
Absolutely.
people understand that we are all in this together.
Yeah. I was born in a country village. I remember my grandmother and grandfather were not educated. They could not even write. But my parents were educated, and they had a university education. And of course, I was educated from like my childhood. And it happened in 50 years in Soviet Union. Same happened in Brazil, Mexico, China, and all other countries. 50 years is a huge period of time if you are in this acceleration pace of the great transition. You
I
started
totally
from
agree.
scratch, and right, like a rocket, you jump from it. And
Yes,
all
I totally
mechanisms
agree
are
that,
very clear.
that-
All mechanisms are very clear. That is why educated people in governments are so important, because they understand how to manage this process of developing on the agrarian country and to lead it to modern era.
Please, Praveen, finish your thoughts.
Oh, I was saying that I totally agree with what Alexander said, that having the leadership be in a position of being aware of the different choices and options available and creating the conditions for the population to be educated in the choices that that group can make is the way to change.
Yeah.
Bring about positive changes.
Yes, absolutely. And
Praveen,
you could look at the world, and as I like to cut some like additional details. Yeah, we could say, okay, let's look at the world without sub-Saharan Africa, without these 4 billion people new population. Let's look at the world without it. We have China, we have India, we have Bangladesh, we have Philippines, we have all these countries. We have 50% from existing 8 billion people, 50% are urban dwellers, and 50% are not. Do we believe that these 50% of non-urban dwellers will become urbanized in 30, 40 years? I believe absolutely, because I know that each government from these countries has this like a priority. Do we believe that they will build power plants and they will find a way how to produce more gravel, cement, sand, and energy for this? I'm sure, because each of these countries, Philippines, Bangladesh, India, and so forth, I believe that they could do it. And so that's the mindset we have. We could say, oh, I don't believe that this country, it was like 150 years ago, nobody from like London or Paris or New York could imagine that these, I don't know, under-civilized people, could someday become like we are. So this division was very strong. Black and white, the color of your skin. This is horrible history. But now we see, the situation is very clear. All nations from the second wave countries, despite their religion, their color, skin color, everything, they did it already. They didn't have any like advantages. They have a right timing. This is evolution.
Alexander, Praveen mentioned very interesting topic. It's the companies, the cars. And Praveen, if you would mind, I will add some last sense for this topic. It's my experience of living in Shenzhen. Shenzhen is maybe you know, it's a city near to Hong Kong, south of the China, and Deng Xiaoping opened the window of China exactly in Shenzhen. And 40 years ago, it was just an average village with people who just fishing and do some rice, etc. And now Shenzhen is a capital of and headquarter of Tencent, Huawei, DJI, and BYD. BYD is electric car producer, and DJI is drone leaders. And I just want to mention this average age of the people who live in Shenzhen is close to 32 or 34, and just increased 4 years ago, and just every year it's increased for 1 year. But a few years ago it was just 28 and 29. So when I remember, when you go to the streets, you never see old people. It's very less old people. And in the headquarters of Tencent, in the subway morning, you just see the 100,000 people, just very young people. And they all not from Shenzhen. None of them, 99% people not from Shenzhen, because Shenzhen is just the village. Yeah? So it's all kids from all around the China. And most of them, they were educated just a few years ago. They passed the Shenzhen University. And before, Shenzhen University was just no history, no legacy. It's just a very new things. Yeah. And now Shenzhen University built the workers for these great companies like Huawei, DJI, BYD, Tencent. They don't hire from outside country, even in China. They hire from Shenzhen University and support a lot. They give a lot of money back, etc. And I just want to mention this. In this case of what you mentioned, this car company not produce the same quality as a Mercedes and BMW. But if we took another industries, we have examples where there's just tens of years ago countries who just produce rice now produce most advanced 5G system, and all this stuff what China produce now. Yeah. So that's again some kind of evidence of mega transition, and there are no chances happen everywhere. We just some countries, maybe Africa will choose some another technologies we even don't know, and will be best in the world maybe by the end of this century in some of the specific industries what maybe even not existed. I don't know.
No, I totally agree. That's actually exactly what I was saying, that at the same time that we are making changes now, it's good to be respectful in a sense of appreciating what came before.
Yes, that's for sure.
That's what I'm trying to say, is that any change that comes about will really be evolutionary, building on what came before, maybe in a wholly different, radical way.
Yes. Thank you, Praveen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for participating.
Join us for our next 2 or 3 webinars.
Yes.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for hosting this. I look forward to it.
Okay. Bye-bye, Praveen, if you need to leave.
Is it next? Are we meeting next week or the week after?
Week after. Week after.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Praveen.
We will discuss.
Bye-bye. Alexander, you have a question, and I guess
some feedback, because last time you asked about it. I try to be shorter. На русском мне это проще. Ну, во-первых, спасибо Александру. Сегодня был семинар такой боевой, пассионарный и очень интересный. Но я поймал себя на мысли в конце, что нет пространства для дискуссии. Мы же всегда хотим подискутировать, и когда есть какие-то выводы, когда, то есть изложены факты, безусловно, факты все очень интересные, увлекательные, но с фактами сложно дискутировать. Должны быть какие-то выводы, какие-то пространства для последующего. Если мы хотим прогресса, то дискуссия как раз один из способов, который к этому ведет. В прошлый раз, я бы еще задал какой-то вектор. То есть на текущий момент мы понимаем, что то будущее, которое нас ждет, оно там с почти 100% вероятностью нас ждет, никак не обеспечивается существующими подходами к даже, ну, как бы, как мы называем, выходом из кризиса. То есть те технологии, те механизмы, там, карбоновый налог, которые продумываются, они призваны решить текущую ситуацию. И мы даже видим, что они с текущей ситуацией не справляются.
Нет,
И очевидно, что если...
одну из проблем в текущей ситуации.
Одной из проблем текущей ситуации, с которой и то не факт, что они справятся. Поэтому можно, конечно, исходя вот из изложенного, рассмотреть технологии, но большого смысла не будет, потому что очевидно, что если в десятки раз ситуация поменяется, ну, в объемах, по количеству необходимой энергии, стали, цемента и так далее, то рассматривать существующие подходы нет смысла. Мне показалась интересная идея Александра, только ее надо как-то, может быть, переложить уже в конкретику, пойти от обратного, ну, вот roadmap. То есть если мы понимаем, что вот там через десятилетие, 2, 3, 4 у нас будет такая ситуация, давайте мы roadmap'ом нарисуем тогда, что нам нужно в технологиях производства электроэнергии, производства цемента, производства стали, производства еды, потому что был прошлый семинар про смену режима питания при переходе там, с 3-4 волны на первую. И мы конкретизируем вот этот, как сказал Александр, перейдем технологии на другой уровень. Мы более конкретно увидим, где у нас белые пятна, и почему мы не можем построить это самое будущее, исходя из существующей ситуации. Не только технологии, причем там могут быть, ведь у нас же кроме технологий есть регуляторы малоэффективные, есть сторона как бы производства электроэнергии, есть сторона потребления электроэнергии. Можно все рассмотреть в комплексе, и если мы понимаем, что нам нужно производить примерно столько-то стали, или во столько-то раз больше стали, во столько-то раз больше электроэнергии, во столько-то раз больше цемента, нам мяса нужно в 25 тысяч раз больше, то мы от обратно можем посчитать, какие производственные мощности, какие технологии, с какими параметрами необходимы, чтобы это сделать, не сломать климат, например. Ну или сломать его меньше, чем до конца.
Да.
Тогда был бы какой-то вектор, когда мы понимаем, вот они уже более конкретные задачи, вот в этих вот направлениях, которые можно решать.
Александр, если я комментарий дам, и потом Александр обширный. Я хотел сказать, что мы своей первичной целью видим завершить курс качественно. И вот каждый такой вебинар, который мы ведем, он занимает не один день подготовки. И также мы делаем же видеоролики на основе этого. И то есть наша главная задача на текущей стадии – это завершить полное описание концепции и сделать из этого определенный, ну, помимо курса, я назову это, скажем, оформить полностью концепт, да, потому что один в поле не воин здесь точно, и нам нужно будет расширять количество участников этой активности. И вот даже создание такого роудмэпа – это, ну, там, огромный по организационным, интеллектуальным и в том числе финансовым ресурсам проект, который, насколько мне известно, не делала какая-то единая организация, такого целостного подхода не применяла. То есть есть прогнозы там у каждых сталелитейщиков, да, как Александр нам объяснял, да, есть прогнозы у сталелитейщиков, есть прогнозы у удобрения там и так далее, но все они, вот, сложность их собрать вот в одном месте и так далее. Вот, поэтому мы хотим действовать очень. Мы все дуэры и все предприниматели. Вот, просто есть этап, когда нужно завершить концепцию и сделать ее как бы инструментом для создания коммуникационной базы для всех, кто придет дальше. Вот, иначе мы будем все разговаривать на разных языках и по-разному относиться к этому, к разным аспектам. И коммуникация в этом проекте спасения планеты, да, или снижения этой проблемы, это номер, там, может быть, 2 или номер 1 даже, чтобы люди начали друг друга понимать. Парижская вот конвенция последняя, да, Парижское соглашение прекрасно показало, что все выступающие говорили на совершенно разных языках. страны первого мира требуют, чтобы страны третьего и четвертого мира делали по-другому.
Не строили электростанции.
Да, это совершенно, страны третьего мира уже, по сути, ведут себя как люди, скажем, как будто они делают что-то плохое. Хотя страны первой волны уже это сделали давно. В общем, и таким образом нет коммуникационной платформы. И все друг друга легко могут обвинить и легко уходить в полемику и в демагогию. Вот. Поэтому наша главная задача сейчас очень качественный курс сделать и дальше курс начать продвигать как концепцию, привлекать все больше партнеров, людей, инвесторов и так далее.
Все это, безусловно, верно, я с этим согласен полностью. Насчет модели. Много чего никто никогда не делал, даже, наверное, то, что сейчас Александр излагает в таком системном виде, тоже никто не излагал. Но мне кажется, что это вполне, есть английское как раз слово feasible, такую модель задать, причем задать с вашей стороны, в которой уже другие будут уже полемизировать, дискутировать. Вот эту модель как раз между теми параметрами, которые мы видим по демографии, по урбанизации, по необходимости в электроэнергии, по необходимости в строительных материалах, с одной стороны, и с другой стороны по существующим технологическим, плюс то, что регуляторы как раз еще уменьшают эффективность производства за счет регулирования, которое накладывает на все это. И эта модель позволит уже задать какое-то русло, в котором надо смотреть. Потому что, как выразились, какой-то технооптимист скажет, давайте сделаем так. Мы говорим, мы сделаем так, но это поменяет на выходе 1% из того, что необходимо. Мне кажется, что вот такую крупноуровневую модель, в принципе, сделать можно за какой-то там осязаемый объем трудоемкости. А потом ее можно уже наращивать, детализировать, но уже будет какое-то пространство, в котором при общей терминологической базе можно более эффективно выстроить взаимодействие с теми, кто, вы говорите, нужно увлекать новых людей и так далее.
Я понял. Да, спасибо. Александр, что вы думаете по этому?
Да нет, наверное. Я делаю то, что я могу сделать, и на что у меня хватает личного времени, энергии, сил, мозга и так далее, и так далее. Поэтому ясно, что если бы у меня были еще ресурсы, как у Билла Гейтса, наверное, я бы делал гораздо больше. Хотя, возможно, я бы тогда не дошел до того понимания, до которого я дошел, имея время на это и имея готовность тратить свой каждый день на изучение этой темы. Как сложить наилучшим образом вот эту 100-летнюю программу перехода, как создать новый The Great Transition ООН, который поставит своей задачей в течение 100 лет сопровождать вот эту дорогу, помогая развиваться странам 3-4, при этом не попав в полный конфликт с биосферой Земли, которая уже стало тяжело нас переносить. У меня нет готового ответа. В этом смысле это путь. Вот это
надо ангажировать,
избранный путь.
Надо ангажировать кого-то, вовлечь еще тогда в эту
наверное, нет.
работу.
Нет, в этом смысле мы для этого и делаем. Как
раз это и происходит.
Вебинары, публикации, надеюсь, книги какие-нибудь издадим или еще что-то, где-нибудь на конференциях будем выступать. Просто я понимаю, что 21 век, про это говорят всякие, так сказать, большие люди типа Далай-ламы, Папы Римского, 21 век, либо мы внутри построим новые институты и органы управления наднационального уровня, то есть уровня единого человечества, либо мы будем переживать очередные, так сказать, войны и прочие как они потенциально как не за ресурсы вроде будут вот так выглядеть. Но причина всегда именно в том, что напряжение психоэмоциональное так вот нарастает, и всегда в каких-нибудь разных странах есть люди более жесткого склада, ястребинного настроения, которые всегда решение видят в области что-то там подсократить кого-нибудь, разбомбить или еще что-то. Поэтому очевидно, что уровень напряжения высок, традиционные институты просто работают отвратительно и на уровне стран, и на уровне ООН, и международные институты и так далее, и так далее. Поэтому я с удовольствием, вернее, я мечтаю найти какое-то количество институтов или людей, или организаций, которые могут попытаться создать вот мирового уровня think tank и думать как президент мира. Да, вот я люблю эту фразу. Если ты думаешь как президент мира, у тебя вся картина становится другой. Если ты думаешь как президент какой-то страны, у тебя вся картина через призму этого оптического прицела.
Я как раз очень разделяю, как ни странно вы сказали, очень разделяю эту точку зрения, причем уже не сегодня, а там какое-то время назад, давно. Но почему бы тогда вот это тоже не сделать частью материала? Потому что, мне кажется, это очень важно. Ведь если мы говорим, это не только технологии там решают. Если мы говорим об этих вещах, то мы понимаем, что текущий государственный институт, как государство, он, в общем-то, устарел, он для этого не предназначен. У него там совсем другие темы. Охрана территориальных границ, которые в этой схеме, ну вообще... Ну, если
эти институты пришли тоже из аграрных обществ.
Конечно. То есть сами институты не способны решать подобного рода задачи. Ну, он там создавался там, с какой-то политической темой. То есть можно тоже сделать это частью этого материала. То есть нужны другие институты, другие технологии,
ну вот
другие
в завершающем, так сказать, вебинаре или в завершающей серии этого курса будет в том числе и про это разговор. Но ведь вопрос не только в том, чтобы это сказать, вопрос в том, чтобы тебя услышали, вопрос в том, чтобы захотели тебя слушать почему-то. Кто это такой, да, что его слушать? Услышав, услышали, да, то есть поняли, приняли, а не кинулись в спор, потому что у них, ну, масса других умных людей, у которых другие картины мира.
Это факт, безусловно, да. Но обычно там много идет в этих других картинах мира, повторения уже там одного и того же. Может быть, зайти с другой стороны. Ведь страны первой волны действительно в этом не особо заинтересованы. Но странам третьей и четвертой предстоит сделать вот то самое, о чем было сказано.
Да, вот об этом мы хорошо тоже понимаем.
И они могут быть в этом плане более готовы услышать те вещи, о том, что все-таки какой путь им предстоит пройти. Они могут еще сами этого не до конца видеть. А если к этому еще будет присовокуплено хоть какие-то там начертания, как это, то это может быть им как-то интереснее, они могут из этого что-то услышать. Ну, опять же, как мысли вслух.
Согласен, нет, абсолютно все.
Я думаю, нам надо сейчас заканчивать. Александр, спасибо большое за roadmap и за вот эту всю мысль комплексную. Я думаю, что это точно нас вдохновляет, и мы много уже внутри говорим о следующих шагах после курса. Вот. И как раз вот проведение вебинаров – это наш формат, с одной стороны, готовить контент, с другой стороны, вот какую-то обратную связь получать. Поэтому вот эта химия, она как раз сейчас и происходит. Мы в любом случае сейчас имеем большой арсенал методов и подходов из-за того, что сейчас и навыки Александра, и знания, и мои, и Марека, и там, некоторых других членов команды, мы теперь разные имеем школы, и поэтому вот этот симбиоз, комплекс методов, он еще предстоит. Точно здесь не один сможет это все делать. Нужна командная большая работа. Вот. Наша задача сейчас, самое главное, это вот выразить максимально точно все, что хочет сказать Александр, и все, что он разработал. Я прощаюсь, Александр. Всем спасибо большое за сегодняшний вебинар. Было невероятно круто.
Спасибо, до свидания.
Спасибо, счастливо. До следующих встреч.
До следующих встреч, до свидания.
Пока-пока.